What if the cartoons that shaped the dreams of the 1970s are now buried in static and forgotten reels? These were the shows that dared to mix psychedelia with politics, courage with chaos, fantasy with fear. Some were banned, some vanished, yet each helped define the minds of a generation. Tonight, we journey into the strange, forgotten realm of 15 1970s cartoons that changed everything. Number 15, Wait Till Your Father Gets Home, 1972. Before Family Guy or The Simpsons, there was Wait Till Your Father Gets Home, a primetime animated sitcom that looked sweet on the surface, yet hid a mirror to American paranoia. The story followed Harry Boyle, a conservative father, trying to raise his family in a world of shifting morals. His son was a hippie, his daughter chased pop culture, and his wife tried to keep peace amid generational fire. Produced by Hanna-Barbera, it shocked audiences who expected light humor and got political satire instead. The show tackled topics like feminism, war protests, and racial bias, all during an era when cartoons were expected to sell cereal, not question authority. Critics praised it for bravery, while some TV affiliates banned episodes calling them unfit for family viewing. Behind the scenes, the writers fought network censors who demanded entire scenes be rewritten. Even the laugh track was controversial, added to dull the edge of its message, but its legacy lived on. It was the first animated series to speak directly to adults, paving the way for every animated sitcom that followed. The laughter faded, but its warning about a divided America still echoes through television history. Number 14, CABB 2020, 1972. In an age when the future felt bright, CABB 2020 imagined life beneath the ocean. Produced by Hanna-Barbera, this short-lived series followed a team of scientists living in a futuristic underwater base studying marine life and confronting ecological disasters. It was bold, it was visionary, but America was not ready for a children's show preaching environmental doom. Each episode mixed adventure with warnings about pollution, oil spills, and greed. The tone was serious, almost prophetic. Critics found it too somber, while young audiences tuned out. Network executives demanded more action and less talk about melting ice caps. Ratings sank. Behind closed doors, animators struggled with technical limitations that made underwater sequences difficult to animate. Production costs skyrocketed. Scripts were scrapped, and the project drowned after only 13 episodes. Yet decades later, fans rediscovered it, calling it ahead of its time. Its resurrection came unexpectedly when CABB 2021, a dark parody, aired on Adult Swim, turning the forgotten series into cult legend. What began as a failed environmental warning became a satire of human folly. The original CABB 2020 remains a haunting message from an era that tried to warn us about the planet long before anyone listened. Number 13, The Roman Holidays, 1972. Imagine the Flintstones in togas. That was The Roman Holidays, a Hanna-Barbera experiment set in ancient Rome, where the jokes about modern life collided with chariot traffic jams and gladiator labor unions. The Spies family, led by patriarch Gus, lived in the year 63 AD, juggling rent gladiator bosses and nosy emperors. It was quirky and oddly familiar, a mirror of 1970s suburban life disguised as history. Though charming, it faced heavy criticism for being a lazy clone of the Flintstones and the Jetsons. Audiences failed to connect with its satirical humor. Network executives expected a lighthearted romp, but the writers sneaked in jokes about taxation corruption and the fall of empires. Censors clipped scenes that hinted at imperial decadence, fearing they mocked modern politics. Behind the scenes, the cast voiced frustration over tight schedules and recycled animation cells. Many scenes were traced from the Flintstones to cut costs, leading to backlash from animators who felt the series deserved better. Despite its short run, its legacy endured as an odd curiosity in animation history. It foreshadowed how satire could disguise truth beneath laughter. The Roman Holidays became a forgotten relic, whispering that every civilization, even one built on animation, eventually falls under its own weight. Number 12, The Barclays, 1973. Before animated families like the Griffins or the Belchers ruled television, there were The Barclays, a short-lived but daring attempt to bring all-in-the-family-style social satire into Saturday morning. Produced by Die Freiling Enterprises, the show followed a working-class family of anthropomorphic dogs navigating everyday life with a surprising amount of bite. At the center was Arnie Barkley, a stubborn blue-collar father constantly clashing with a changing world he didn't quite understand. What made the show radical wasn't the canine gimmick, it was the commentary. Episodes quietly tackled generational conflict, gender roles, and economic anxiety, all wrapped in warm family humor. But networks panicked almost immediately. Some scripts were flagged for implied political themes. Others were softened when censors feared parents might recognize the parallels to real social debates dominating the early 70s. Behind the scenes, animators struggled with the show's pacing. De Freiling had to produce episodes quickly on tight budgets, relying on recycled walk cycles and simplified backgrounds. Writers often joked that the dogs weren't allowed to bark too loudly. Network notes always demanded something be toned down. The Barclays lasted only 13 episodes before fading into obscurity. Yet today, it stands as a forgotten trailblazer, a family sitcom that that dared to nibble at real issues long before primetime animation found its voice. Number 11. Freedom Force, 1978. Before superheroes dominated the world of cinema, Freedom Force tried to unite myth, history, and heroism into one extraordinary Saturday morning adventure. Produced by Filmation, the series followed a team of legendary figures including Hercules Sinbad, Merlin Isis, and Super Samurai as they defended Earth from cosmic villains. It was ambitious, grand, and utterly misunderstood. Audiences expected simple action. What they got was a philosophical parable disguised as a cartoon. Episodes contained moral lessons about destiny, freedom, and moral choice. Yet beneath the noble tone, the show carried heavy undertones of Cold War tension. Every villain seemed to represent the chaos of ideology. Every battle echoed the anxiety of global warfare. Filmation poured enormous resources into the series, but the animation budget strained under its mythic scope. Animators reused cells and loops to save costs. Writers clashed over tone. One camp wanted superhero spectacle, the other wanted moral fables. The result confused both children and critics. Network censors interfered, constantly removing depictions of violence or magic they deemed too frightening. The show's third episode was delayed for months due to fear it resembled nuclear warfare. Within a single season, Freedom Force was gone, yet its influence endured. Its team dynamic inspired later series like Justice League and Hercules: The Legendary Journeys. Animation historians now view it as one of Filmation's most daring failures, a series that reached too high and fell before the world was ready. Its forgotten theme song still whispers through the vaults of animation history, promising that freedom must be fought for, not simply assumed. Number 10. Valley of the Dinosaurs, 1974. It was the prehistoric answer to Lost in Space, a blend of family adventure, time travel, and survival horror. Valley of the Dinosaurs followed the Butler family, a father, mother, son, daughter, and their dog swept through a mysterious whirlpool and stranded in a hidden valley untouched by time. There they encountered a tribe of cave dwellers and creatures straight from Earth's dawn. Produced by Hanna-Barbera, the series carried a serious tone, rare for Saturday mornings. It was not comedy, it was survival. The family had to build shelters, forge tools, and navigate both nature and culture shock. Beneath the adventure lay subtle lessons about science cooperation and respect for primitive intelligence. But despite noble intentions, Valley of the Dinosaurs faced constant production nightmares. The prehistoric settings demanded complex background art, which ballooned costs. Network. Sponsors pushed for more humor, but creators refused. Ratings dipped. Critics accused it of being too educational. Behind the curtain, animators reused sequences from Johnny Quest and the Herculoids to save time. Sound engineers used animal recordings from Hanna-Barbera's library, including growls originally created for Godzilla. Despite these struggles, the show earned a small but loyal following among science teachers who saw it as a tool for curiosity. When CBS abruptly canceled it after 16 episodes, the creators were devastated. Many of the original storyboards were lost in studio storage. Decades later, fans discovered restored prints revealing its artistry. Today it stands as one of the most intelligent animated experiments of its era. Forgotten by viewers but beloved by scholars, Valley of the Dinosaurs remains proof that even in the land of monsters, the greatest struggle is to stay human. Number 9. Mission Magic, 1973. Long before celebrity voice actors became common, Mission Magic dared to mix live-action pop music and fantasy. The series starred pop icon Rick Springfield as himself a groovy teacher who guided his students through a magical portal to alternate worlds. Each episode combined psychedelic animation with songs written and performed by Springfield himself. On paper, it was a dream project. In reality, it was chaos barely disguised as Saturday morning optimism. The premise was simple yet surreal. Miss Tickle, a school teacher with mystical powers, could transport her class into another realm using a talking cat and a magical blackboard. There, they faced strange creatures, moral puzzles, and interdimensional lessons about compassion. Each adventure ended with a song summarizing the moral message. It was a bridge between bubblegum rock and children's education. But Mission Magic never found its audience. Some parents accused it of promoting witchcraft, while conservative groups protested its occult undertones. ABC executives grew anxious as the cultural tide shifted toward realism and superhero action. Episodes were re-edited to remove spells and incantations. Animators complained that studio interference destroyed narrative flow. Behind the scenes, Rick Springfield himself struggled with the project's tone. He had been promised a teen idol platform, but was trapped in what he later called a psychedelic schoolhouse with no rules. Ratings faltered. The show was quietly canceled after one season, though its songs became collector's items among pop historians. Years later, Mission Magic achieved cult resurrection as early Rick Springfield fans uncovered lost episodes. What once seemed like a misguided experiment now feels like an audacious blend of music and animation, decades ahead of MTV's video revolution. It proved that even failed magic leaves behind a little spark of wonder. Number 8. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids, 1973. In the strange logic of 1970s television, Hanna-Barbera decided that America's most infamous outlaw duo should return as teenage pop stars and secret agents. Thus, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids was born an animated series that defied logic, yet perfectly captured the disco decade's delirious imagination. The show followed a rock band who moonlighted as international spies guided by a computer named Mr. Socrates. Butch, voiced by Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees, led missions involving stolen artifacts and sinister masterminds, all while performing catchy pop tunes between car chases. It was part James Bond, part Scooby-Doo, part bubblegum chaos. Audiences were baffled. Parents objected to glamorizing criminals, even in cartoon form. Teen viewers found it too sanitized. Critics called it a confused attempt to mix espionage with music. Censors stepped in after early drafts included scenes where the heroes used real weapons. The studio replaced them with laser gadgets and comic antics. Behind-the-curtain production was frantic. Voice actors recorded songs and dialogue on the same day, often without finished scripts. Animators reused scenes from Josie and the Pussycats to meet broadcast deadlines. Despite the frenzy, the soundtrack gained a following, with songs later pressed on rare vinyl singles now sought by collectors. The show lasted only 13 episodes before vanishing into Saturday morning oblivion. Yet its strange fusion of rock and espionage predicted the coming wave of youth adventure cartoons. It stands today as a glittering fossil from a time when anything could become a cartoon, even outlaws reborn as idols. The Wild West met the mod world and disappeared in a flash of color and confusion. Number 7. The Funky Phantom, 1971. When Hanna-Barbera merged ghost stories with teen mysteries, The Funky Phantom emerged as a spirited reflection of both American nostalgia and post-hippie absurdity. The show followed a trio of teens and their ghostly companion, Jonathan Muddlemore, a Revolutionary War soldier accidentally released from a grandfather clock. Along with his ghostly cat Boo, they solved mysteries while spreading laughs and patriotic puns. It looked like another Scooby-Doo clone, and to some degree it was. But beneath the goofy premise hid sharp social satire. Episodes subtly poked fun at bureaucracy authority, and the idea of national heroes haunting a morally confused new generation. The Ghost represented old ideals colliding with modern youth freedom. Yet controversy soon brewed. Some critics accused the show of trivializing American history. Teachers protested its slapstick depiction of the Revolutionary Era. Network executives panicked and demanded softer scripts, removing scenes that made historical figures look foolish. The creative team reluctantly complied, though writers privately admitted they had planned more biting commentary. Production also suffered from time crunches. The ghost effects were expensive, requiring double exposures and repeated backgrounds. Hanna-Barbera reused sound effects from Top Cat and the Jetsons to save time. Despite its charm, the show ended after only 17 episodes. Still, the Funky Phantom refused to fade away. It reappeared briefly in the 1980s as reruns and inspired later ghost comedies like The Real Ghostbusters. Today, it's remembered as a strange bridge between patriotism and counterculture humor. A forgotten ghost that once tried to teach kids that even history has a sense of humor, and that sometimes the past refuses to rest quietly. Number 6. The Space Sentinels, 1977. Long before cinematic universes and superhero teams filled theaters, the Space Sentinels attempted to create an animated mythos that united ancient gods and futuristic science. Produced by Filmation, it followed 3 immortal heroes, Hercules, Mercury, and Astrea, chosen by cosmic forces to protect humanity from intergalactic threats. They lived aboard a massive orbiting station commanded by a computer named Sentinel-1. It was ambitious, futuristic, and quietly philosophical. Each episode balanced action with moral lessons about unity, courage, and responsibility. Hercules embodied strength, Mercury represented speed, and Astrea symbolized wisdom and compassion. Together, they faced aliens, evil sorcerers, and galactic disasters, often resolving conflict through intellect rather than violence. This made the Space Sentinels radically different from its contemporaries, which relied on slapstick or monster of the week chaos. But its very depth doomed it. Critics labeled it overly serious for Saturday mornings. Children wanted explosions, not ethical dilemmas. Censors grew wary of its mythological roots, fearing parental backlash over pagan references. Episodes mentioning gods or ancient rituals were rewritten or shortened. Filmation animators later revealed entire story arcs were shelved because networks considered them too spiritual. Behind the scenes, the studio faced financial collapse, juggling Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle, and The New Adventures of Batman simultaneously. Corners were cut, scenes recycled, and the grand vision faded into production exhaustion. Yet its artistry remained remarkable, featuring early use of rotoscope animation that gave its movements realistic grace. Decades later, animation historians recognized the Space Sentinels as a lost cornerstone of serious animated storytelling. It helped shape future superhero animation, emphasizing morality and consequence over chaos. Though forgotten by viewers, it stands as one of the boldest early experiments in blending mythology and modern science fiction. The stars may have dimmed, but its legacy still orbits quietly above. Number 5. Wheelie and the Chopper Bunch, 1974. At first glance, Wheelie and the Chopper Bunch looked like harmless slapstick about talking motorcycles, but beneath its metallic humor lay a curious allegory for individuality versus conformity. The series followed Wheelie, a kind-hearted red motorcycle who constantly outsmarted a gang of jealous choppers, led by Chopper himself. Every episode was a chase filled with pranks, mechanical chaos, and moral lessons buried beneath roaring engines. It was Hanna-Barbera's attempt to cash in on Wacky Race's success while blending it with the emerging car culture craze. Yet there was something deeper. Wheelie's refusal to join the chopper gang symbolized rebellion against group mentality, a reflection of youth culture in post-Vietnam America. Critics barely noticed it, but the metaphor was there hidden in exhaust fumes and laughter tracks. The show ran only one season, but faced bizarre criticism. Some parents claimed it encouraged reckless driving, while others said the anthropomorphic machines felt unsettling. Censors demanded edits to remove scenes implying collisions or stunts too easy to imitate. Animators were frustrated. Episodes were shortened to meet safety guidelines. Behind the scenes, deadlines were brutal. Hanna-Barbera reused animation loops from older shows, including Speed Buggy and The Jetsons. Writers were instructed to remove any plotline that hinted at human presence to save on animation complexity. Despite the chaos, it built a cult following among gearheads and children who loved its rebellious tone. Merchandising deals failed, but the show's unique sound design, featuring roaring engines mixed with jazz riffs, became legendary. Today, Wheelie and the Chopper Bunch feels like a time capsule of mechanical innocence before cartoons became overly polished. It reminds us that even metal can have heart, and that rebellion sometimes takes the shape of a single red motorcycle racing against conformity. Number 4. The Hound Cats, 1972. Before the A-Team or Mission Impossible imprinted their style onto action television, the Hound Cats attempted something wildly ambitious, an animated action comedy built around covert missions, political conspiracies, and spy-era swagger. Produced by De Freyling, the show followed 5 canine commandos, dispatched on dangerous assignments by a mysterious leader known only as the Chief. Every mission parodied real geopolitical fears, from rogue dictators to stolen technology. What surprised viewers was its tone. Beneath the slapstick and animal disguises, episodes contained sharp jabs at bureaucracy, military incompetence, and global paranoia. In a decade shaken by Vietnam and Watergate, it was daring, maybe too daring. Some stations refused to air specific episodes, claiming they mirrored real conflicts too closely for children's programming. Production was equally chaotic. The stunt-heavy animation demanded complex layouts and action choreography. The Patier Freylang struggled to deliver on a limited budget. Animators reused explosions, chase loops, and entire scenes to keep up with deadlines. Writers often battled censors who removed jokes they believed were accidentally too accurate. The Hound Cats ended after just 13 episodes, dismissed as too weird and too political. But decades later, animation historians praise it as an early attempt to blend parody, espionage, and satire, a forgotten experiment that tried to smuggle grown-up anxieties into Saturday morning fun. Number 3. Develin, 1974. In a decade obsessed with freedom, speed, and rebellion, Develin roared across Saturday mornings as a rare attempt to blend stunt culture with moral storytelling. Produced by Hanna-Barbera, it followed Ernie Develin, a daredevil motorcyclist, touring with a traveling circus along with his younger siblings Todd and Sandy. Every episode delivered danger lessons about responsibility and a quiet message about family loyalty. At first, Develin looked like harmless action, but it carried heavy undertones of fear and consequence. The show's premise was inspired by real-life stunt legend Evel Knievel, whose fame symbolized both courage and recklessness. When Knievel's real-life accidents filled the headlines, ABC executives panicked. Suddenly, a cartoon about stunts felt too close to tragedy. Censors imposed strict rules forbidding depictions of injuries or failed jumps. Animators had to reframe sequences to show implied danger rather than actual crashes. Scripts were rewritten overnight to emphasize safety messages. What began as a thrilling series about pushing limits turned into a moral cautionary tale. Behind the scenes, Hanna-Barbera staff were overworked and underpaid. The motorcycle action required complex animation cycles that consumed time and resources. Artists traced motion from live stunt footage, but the network cut their budget halfway through production. The creative team persisted, finishing the season under impossible pressure. Viewers were divided. Children loved the adrenaline, while parents praised its wholesome tone. Critics, however, found it confused, too tame for action fans and too somber for kids. Ratings stalled, and the network pulled it after 16 episodes. Decades later, Develin found redemption in nostalgia circuits, hailed as a rare animated meditation on fear, bravery, and consequences. It reflected a decade torn between risk and restraint, between daring dreams and moral panic. The circus left town, but its echoes still rumble like a ghostly engine through animation history. Number 2. Janna of the Jungle, 1978. In the final years of the 70s, Filmation and Hanna-Barbera alike were searching for the next animated hero. Janna of the Jungle delivered something unexpected, a female protagonist in an era dominated by male adventurers. The show followed Janna, an orphan raised in the South American rainforest, who fought to protect endangered animals and ancient secrets. It was environmental myth-making decades before it became fashionable. Janna's character was noble, fierce, and intelligent, inspired loosely by Tarzan, but with a scientific heart. She used her knowledge of nature and ancient lore to confront poachers, treasure hunters, and invading industrialists. It was one of the earliest animated series to openly criticize ecological destruction. Network executives, however, however, feared it was too political. Censors demanded script changes, removing scenes that portrayed corporations negatively. Several planned episodes involving oil spills and rainforest fires were shelved for being too realistic. The studio cut the series short after just 13 episodes. Behind the curtain, animators admired its ambition. The lush jungle settings were drawn with rare care, using layered backgrounds to create depth. Voice actress B.J. Ward infused Janna with quiet strength, while the soundtrack blended flutes and percussion to mimic tribal rhythms. But despite artistry, the audience never grew. Competing against the Super Friends and Scooby-Doo Janna of the jungle was overshadowed and quietly buried, yet its spirit endured. Later, environmental heroes from Captain Planet to Pocahontas owed something to Janna's blueprint. She was forgotten by television, but rediscovered by historians as a trailblazer who dared to give voice to conscience. In an age of pollution and power, she whispered a truth too early to be heard. Number 1. The Mighty Orbots, 1979. At the dawn of anime influence, the Mighty Orbots arrived as an explosion of color sound and futuristic optimism. A co-production between Japanese studio TMS and American creators, it fused Eastern animation artistry with Western heroics years before the anime boom. The show followed Commander Rob Simmons and his team of 6 transforming robots united to defend Earth from the intergalactic criminal network Shadow. Visually, it was stunning. Every frame glowed with metallic brilliance and cosmic scale. Yet behind its beauty lay endless struggle. Budgets spiraled. Animation deadlines crushed animators. American executives clashed with Japanese directors over tone and violence. Some episodes were rewritten 5 times to meet both cultural standards. Censors worried about its intense battles. Networks feared it was too dark for children. Filmation lobbied to pull it, fearing competition with their own Transformers-inspired projects. By its second month, the Mighty Orbots was facing quiet sabotage, poor time slots, minimal advertising, and withheld syndication rights. But what truly doomed it was corporate rivalry. Its distributor faced legal disputes with toy companies, and executives decided to scrap the entire line before it could compete with Hasbro's emerging Transformers. Despite critical praise, it aired only 1 season. Decades later, the series became a legend among collectors and animators who hailed its design as a lost masterpiece. It represented the turning point between American cartoons and Japanese anime fusion. Every modern mech series owes its silent debt. In the fading light of the 70s, the Mighty Orbots was a beacon of creativity crushed by commerce, a robot dream dismantled before it could soar. Yet even now, the memory hums with energy like circuitry waiting to awaken again. These forgotten 1970s cartoons were more than Saturday diversions. They were experiments, visions, and warnings hidden in color and sound. Some fell to censorship, others to confusion. Yet all changed animation in ways unseen. Which of these lost gems deserves revival? Share your thoughts below, and do not forget to like, subscribe, and keep the nostalgia alive.